My name is Gary Beikirch. I was in Special Forces. I served with three different groups of the Special Forces. I served with the 3rd Special Forces Group, the 5th Special Forces Group in Vietnam, and then the 10th Special Forces Group. During that time, I served as a medical aid man on an A team. Our location was in a small, remote Montagnard village up on the Laotian border. It was about 3 miles from Laos. Our mission at that time was to provide surveillance, recon, interdiction, monitoring of the Ho Chi Minh Trail of supplies headed down from the north to the south. We were in the Central Highlands, the jungles. It was a very remote camp. There were 2,300 Montagnards in the camp, 12 Americans. There were 450 individuals in the camp that we considered combatants. Anybody within the Montagnard society, at least in the tribe that I worked with, the Sedang, anyone who was 12 years old or older was considered a combatant. So we had 450 men that were combatants. That was our strength. And as I said, our job was to do recon, surveillance, monitoring, ambushes, and things like that. Anything we could do to disrupt the flow of supplies down the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And then we also used to, they used to use our camp as a jump-off point for cross-border operations and any other kinds of military things that needed to be done in remote areas. They utilized Special Forces. It was fun. It was a great, great time. I was a 23-year-old kid, medic, who was responsible for the health of 2,300 people, including 12 Americans. It was a time of growing up. It was a time of learning so many things about life. And surprisingly, the people that taught me that were the Montagnards. I grew to love them. I grew to consider that place my home for a variety of reasons. But my intention was to stay there and forever. It was that kind of an experience. It was like being in a Shangri-La. You know, what 23-year-old kid reaches his dream, of the responsibility that you have, just the relationships with people. It was just a tremendous, tremendous time, not only among the Americans, but among the Montagnards especially. April 1st, 1970, our camp was surrounded by 10,000 North Vietnamese. Their goal was to overrun the camp. It was at the height of the Vietnamization program, and they were looking for a victory, and even a victory that would create any kind of a black eye on America's plans for turning the war over to the Vietnamese. And their goal was to overrun our camp. So on April 1st, 1970, they launched a tremendous land assault after about 3 hours of artillery on our camp early in the morning, which early in the morning in the Montagnard society, the only people that are up, about 3 or 4 o'clock are the women and kids, and women are starting to prepare food and things. So the casualties that took place were mostly women and children at that time. As soon as the incoming started coming in, all the Americans went to their alert positions, and the battle began. For me, it was taking care of all the wounded. During that time, I was hit the first time with shrapnel from a 122 millimeter rocket. Hit me in the back, in the spine, and actually knocked my spinal cord out. There was no shrapnel in the cord, to sever the cord, but it was all embedded in up and down the spinal column. It was a real miracle. And it was just like a concussion to the spinal cord. And so I couldn't move from that point on, but two of my yards, my Montagnards, picked me up and carried me throughout the battle. And during that time, we just continued to bring people down to the medical bunker, go back out. And by that time, after the artillery had stopped after a couple hours, that's when the North Vietnamese, who had previously dug tunnels underneath all our wires, kind of like what they did at Dien Bien Phu. They dug tunnels, and after the artillery stopped, then they broke to the surface, and they were already past much of our defensive perimeters that we had made, and they were in our wire, and that's when the land assault started. And it was during that time that, as I said, my 2-yard friends were carrying me, and from that point we not only started to take care of the wounded and bring them down to the medical bunker, but we started fighting. And I got hit again in the back, and they brought me down to the medical bunker. The other medic on site, other American medic, wanted me to stay down there, but I said, no, we're not going to. So I got my yard, who was a 15-year-old boy. His name was Deo. I told him, I said, Deo, if I'm going to die, I'm not dying down here. Let's get back into the battle. So he picked me up again, and we went back out into the battle, continued to fight. We heard that our XO, Chris, had gotten blown out of our John Wayne Tower, which was in the middle of the camp. He got hit with a B-40 rocket. So we went out and we got him, brought him down to the bunker, and we kept on going out and fighting and bringing people down and going back out. And then I got shot again in the stomach with small arms. And shortly after that, we heard another rocket coming in, and Deo threw himself on top of me, and he was killed. I was then picked up by another Montagnard, and we continued to fight until I finally collapsed, and they brought me down, and I think it was probably the next day they were finally able to get a chopper in to medevac me. We were surrounded for a month, and if I remember the newspaper accounts correctly, they lost over, it was the 57th Helicopter Assault Battalion. They provided support for us. They lost 27 helicopters in that period of the month. But I remember being medevaced out, and then I spent about 10 months in a hospital recovering. There was a saying that we had in the Special Forces. It was very, very popular in the Vietnam era. It's said that a Marine at Khe Sanh wrote it on a sea ration box. I don't know if that's true. But the saying was, to really live, you must almost die. To those that fight for it, life has a meaning the protected will never know. And 10 months in the hospital, I thought about that life, and the meaning for life was changed for me because of those experiences in Vietnam, because of the relationship that Deo and I had. I mean, here was someone a 15-year-old kid who cared about me enough and Deo was shot twice carrying me around, but he wouldn't put me down. He kept carrying me, and because that's what our friendship was. When I asked him, I remember the first time I got shot, he was right there, and I said, Deo, what are you doing here? I was surprised. And he said, Bác sĩ, which is Vietnamese for doctor. He said, Bác sĩ, this is where I belong. I'm, in today's word, they said, I got your back, But he said, this is where I belong. I'm with you. So for 10 months, I thought about how my life had been changed and what life now meant to me, especially after someone really had died for me. and through other experiences of wrestling with all that and what life meant to me, I'd become a Christian. And now with my new faith and my love that I had for Deo, I said I want to do something special. I want to give back a little bit. And for a while, I thought I was going to return to Vietnam as a missionary, but Vietnam fell in 1975, and so that didn't seem like that was an open door. So I said, okay, what am I going to do next? And through a series of changes, I ended up going back to New York, going on for a master's degree in counseling. I spent about 8 years working with vets at a Veterans Outreach Center, but at the same time, I began to really fall in love with working with kids. And a good friend of mine called me up and said, hey, we have an opening here as a school counselor. Would you like to do that? And I said, I would love to do that. And that was the beginning of investing my life in young people, because a young person had invested his life in mine and changed my life. And so I wanted to give back.
How often do you think about Deo?
Daily. Yeah, every day. Yeah, it's there are moments. There are moments that will never leave you. Often when I speak to young people, I'll use that saying, that life has a meaning the protected will never know. And I'll say, one of the things that I've learned now about life and what life means to me is that, first of all, life is not lived in years. And young people, they say, I can't wait till I'm 16, or I can't wait till I'm 18, or I can't wait till I'm 21. I tell them that life's not lived in years. It's not even lived in months or days. It's lived in moments. And those moments are given to you to do something special, to make right choices, to make decisions that will have an impact on someone else. And those are moment-by-moment decisions. And if you make those decisions with the right motives of caring for somebody and wanting to do what's right and to love someone, those moments will remain with you forever. And that will become your life. Because at 66 years old, which I am now, as I look back on my life, I don't think about successes anymore. And that's the other thing about life. In life, success is not what's important. What's important is significance. And significant comes when you make moment-by-moment decisions to care about someone else and to make a difference in their life. A 15-year-old boy taught me that. And so there are very few, not only are there very few days, but there are very few moments that Deo doesn't cross my heart.